Like any good Hoyoverse game, Zenless Zone Zero allows players to choose a free S-rank character from the standard banner once you've done 300 standard pulls. There are currently 6 standard S-rank characters in Zenless, and because they all have a good amount of value, you may be wondering which one would be the best for you to select for your account. So today, we're going to discuss what each of these standard S-ranks can do, so we can see which of them will be the most valuable picks for your account. First off, we have Grace, who is an electric anomaly DPS character. Her gameplay mainly revolves around her core passive, special attack, and EX special. Her core passive gives her 1 stack of zap with every hit of her basic attack or dash attack, up to a max of 8 stacks. Once Grace uses her special or EX special while she has 8 zap stacks, she'll consume all of the stacks to increase the enemy's electric anomaly buildup by 65% at max core passive level. Grace's playstyle, being centered around her zap stacks, has 2 very important benefits. The first is that not only is it very easy to get it up to 8 zap stacks, but Grace's EX special only costs 40 energy, which is very cheap for an EX special. So that means you'll be able to trigger the shock anomaly rather quickly and get some good damage out of it. The second benefit of her anomaly building up so quickly is that Grace can also be ran alongside another anomaly DPS as more of a sub DPS kind of role. Since Grace can build up electric anomaly so quickly, you can swap to another anomaly DPS since Grace wouldn't be fighting for on-field time with them. Plus, if your other anomaly DPS is a different element, they can easily trigger anomaly disorder while Grace's shock is active, which leads to even more damage. This will likely keep Grace relevant for a long time since many anomaly characters wouldn't replace her outright. Now, let's move on to Rina. Rina is an electric support character that can provide some solid buffs for your team. Her gameplay focuses around Rina sending her 2 Bang Boo partners onto the field. Whenever these Bang Boo are on the field, Rina's core passive buffs all allies' pen ratio by a significant amount. Even though this effect ends once both of Rina's Bang Boos exit the field, they actually stay on field for a short duration after attacking, which helps allies to take advantage of the pen ratio buff. This also allows Rina to not take too much on-field time away from your other characters, as she only needs to be on field to bring her Bang Boos out. Not only that, but if you have Rina's additional ability active, any instance of shock anomaly gets extended by 3 seconds, and all allies get a 10% electric damage increase if an enemy is shocked. Pairing the extra shock with the extra pen buff as well makes Rina a very strong support character for 2 reasons. The first is that her pen ratio buff is extremely universal, so she can work well on most teams if you lack another support character. The second reason is, because of her shock specific buffs through her additional ability, it is very unlikely that she'll be replaced in that role anytime soon. This gives her more value because even if other supports come out that might be better universally or offer more for other teams universally, she's still going to be a very strong character to run alongside other electric characters. Next, let's talk about Koleda. Koleda is a fire stun character that is not only really good at applying daze, but is also fairly easy to use. Her gameplay focuses around her gaining Furnace Fire through her EX special, assist follow-up, chain attack, and ultimate. Furnace Fire is the key to applying daze with Koleda, as her core ability gives her a substantial daze increase when either using her EX special or when Furnace Fire is consumed. The only way that Koleda can consume Furnace Fire is through the 2nd and 4th hits of her basic attack, in which Furnace Fire will enhance it to not only deal the extra daze from her core passive, but also to increase the damage of her basic attack on those hits. Koleda also has a strong additional ability for any fire or Belobog characters, which applies a debuff through her enhanced basic attack that makes enemies take 35% increased damage from chain attacks. This debuff can stack twice, and is only removed once the enemy recovers from being stunned. While this debuff is really good, it also doesn't confine Koleda to just being ran alongside fire or Belobog characters. If your team still needs a really strong and easy to use stun character, Koleda can still do an amazing job with how simple her gameplay is. So now we move on to Nekomata. She is a physical attack character with a very fast playstyle. Despite the fact that pulling her has become a bit of a meme in the community, she is still a solid DPS that is pretty easy to get the hang of, if you can keep up with your fast speed. Her gameplay is all about using her dodge counter and quick assist, since her core ability gives her a really good damage buff for 6 seconds whenever Nekomata's dodge counter or quick assist are used. If you also have her additional ability active, anytime the assault anomaly is triggered by any character, Nekomata's next EX special gets a 35% damage buff, which can stack up to 2 times. This additional ability is great on paper, but considering the fact that Nekomata will be on field a decent amount of the time at the very least, and also the fact that she's not an anomaly character but a regular DPS, you won't have as many chances to inflict a ton of physical anomaly. And not only that, at the time of this video, the only physical anomaly characters in the game are Jane and Piper, who both also will want a decent amount of on-time field as well, with Jane to be able to get use of her, for her state, as well as Piper wanting to just spin with her EX special. So the lack of physical characters that can reliably trigger Nekomata's additional ability does make her lose a bit of value in my opinion. And not to mention, typically in gacha games, DPS characters tend to age out and get power crept faster than supports do in other roles, which also puts Nekomata in a position where if you're thinking long term for your free S rank, Nekomata is not going to have as much value as you might hope, because it is a lot easier for DPS characters to get power crept. But if you're looking more in the short term and you really need just like a quick, good DPS, Nekomata can definitely be a solid character to get for your account. Now, let's talk about Soldier 11, who is a fire attack character. At face value, she doesn't do anything super game breaking, but she's just like a solid DPS. But to get the most out of Soldier 11, you might need to have a bit of skill involved. So her gameplay revolves around her activating her fire suppression through her basic attack to deal increased damage to the enemies. And there's two ways for you to trigger this fire suppression. The easy way is through using her EX special, chain attack, and ultimate, which guarantee that the next 8 basic attacks that Soldier 11 uses will have fire suppression. But the second way, which can require a bit of skill, is that when you use Soldier 11's basic attack at a specific timing, you'll be able to activate fire suppression on each of the attacks. And this is really nice because you're able to trigger fire suppression regardless of having enough energy for your EX special or enough decibels for your ultimate, so you can have her damage be a little more consistent if you do learn the timing of her fire suppression. Also, Soldier 11's additional ability gives her 10% extra damage against all enemies and a further 22.5% against enemies that are stunned when you have another fire ally or another ally from Soldier 11's faction. And at the time of this video, Soldier 11 is the only character from her faction, so this could get better over time, but in terms of fire characters, we do have some pretty solid ones in the game right now in Ben and Lucy, and then of course if you also have Koleda, if you pulled her, she can also work to activate this additional ability as well. But similarly to what I said about Nekomata, since Soldier 11 is a DPS character, she does have a higher chance of being power crept faster by a future limited DPS that could end up doing her job better than she does. So while she is a solid character for now, she may not be as good of a long-term pickup if you want to make a good long-term decision for your account. For our last standard S rank character, we have Lycaon, who honestly might be my favorite of the bunch. Lycaon is an ice stun character that has amazing performance with other ice characters. Lycaon's gameplay revolves around holding the button for his basic attack for each hit and holding the button for his EX special to charge them for two main benefits. The first is that these will deal extra damage to the enemy when you charge them, which is good since Lycaon tends to, outside of the impact he needs for his days, he tends to run a more damage dealer kind of role. So getting extra damage with him is going to be good. But the other benefit of charging his attacks comes from his core skill. Each hit of Lycaon's charged basic attack will inflict a really strong amount of extra days, plus whenever his EX special or assist follow-up hit an enemy, they also will reduce the enemy's ice resistance by 25% for 30 seconds. This allows him to not only stun enemies really quickly, but makes him pretty much a must-run character for any ice team comps because of the ice red decrease. Lycaon's additional ability also allows him to make enemies take 35% more damage when they're stunned if he attacks them during their stun. And since his additional ability activates from having another Ice or Victoria housekeeping ally, it's very easy for him to have this active on his best teams, and those teams are going to be the ones that take the most advantage of this. And I would say also Lycaon is in a very similar situation as Rina, because they both have buffs that are very specific to their element or their attribute. So because of that, he does have a longer standing place in terms of not being replaced, because typically for these gacha games, if you have a very specific type of buff to a specific element or like a specific thing, those characters tend to last for a long time in these games. So Lycaon is also a very strong long-term option. Now that we've gone over what all of the standard S rank characters can do, I'm going to rank them based on how valuable each one will be in the long run, so that you can decide what to select based on what you already have and based on what you want for your account. And I'm going to split them into 3 different levels of priority. At the lowest priority, I'm going to put Nekomata and Soldier 11. Now, both of them are very solid DPS characters in their own right, and can definitely help you out when you are struggling in that regard. But DPS characters tend to get power crept the fastest, as I've said throughout the video. So it is very possible that, if you invest in them now, months down the line, you could see yourself just not even using them. And I feel like for a decision like this, where you're getting a character for free, you probably will want someone who you're going to get as much use out of as possible. So I don't think that Soldier 11 and Nekomata have as much priority as other characters in the selector. Next, for the middle priority, I'm gonna put just Koleda. Now, this just might be from my own personal experience in the game, but Koleda just does her job really well regardless of what team she's on, which I think is really good as a kind of fill-in character if either you don't have many characters in your account, or if your Koleda is built up really well but you don't have as good of a build on some other characters, or if you just want to use Koleda, because Koleda is, she's pretty fun, I'm not gonna lie. But at the same time, regardless of her being super good, she also doesn't stick out as a character that is wow, this character is game breaking, this character is awesome. So I do think that while she's not a top pick for me, if you have most, if not all, the characters that I'm going to say next for our highest priority, I think Koleda is still a very strong option to pick. Then for our highest priority are the last 3 characters here. We have Grace, Rina, and Lycaon. Now, while all 3 of these characters fulfill different roles, all 3 of them have abilities and buffs that specifically focus on a specific attribute. And seeing how other gacha games have handled characters with specific buffs, for the biggest example I can think of is Kafka in Honkai Star Rail, where she has an ability specifically dedicated to her archetype. Kafka is still a very relevant character, despite having been released over a year ago. And because of that, and especially since we are talking about the same company here, they might be different development teams, but same company, I can see these 3 characters being relevant for a long time, with Rina having electric specific buffs, Grace also having stuff for shock, and then Lycaon having ice specific buffs. I think these 3 are going to be very good for the long term. So overall, my top 3 picks for your free S rank character are going to be Lycaon, Rina, and Grace. So let me know in the comments who you picked or who you're planning on picking if you haven't gotten to your 300 pulls yet, which I don't blame you if you haven't, because if you're not, if you're not putting polychromes in, which you shouldn't be putting polychromes in, you'll probably get there in months down the line. But that's going to be the end of the video from me. If you enjoyed and want to see more content, definitely be sure to hit that subscribe button. But I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.